The Unmoored World, Dragon's Dogma 2's endgame. Well, it's technically the start of Dragon's Dogma 2, it's a weird situation. Up until now, the title screen has just said Dragon's Dogma, with the 2 only being added now. However, now that we're in this new world state, the true game begins. You see, Dragon's Dogma is about an unending struggle, the Arisen versus the Dragon, a battle that rages eternal, looping through reincarnation. This concept went as far as to include New Game Plus as a plot point in the first game. The Unmoored World is the result of trying to break this cycle, which is what our spooky ghost friend, in quotations, did in the last video. And now the world is on the brink of collapse. The oceans are completely gone, and an intense storm threatens to swallow all life, and now powerful monsters roam the ruined lands. Now you see, the storm is our first big problem, as it affects the entire game moving forward. After 12 in-game days have passed, the storm will have completely consumed the world, forcing the game to end. So technically we could actually just wait out those 12 days and make it to the end credits, which would complete the challenge. But I know that wouldn't be satisfying for myself or for all of you watching, so let's actually take a look and see what the Unmoored World has to offer. We are tasked with evacuating all of the major settlements from the main game to the Sea Floor Shrine, the last safe haven in the world, giving as many people as possible a chance to survive in the process. In addition to this, 4 red pillars of energy have manifested in various locations, each of which indicates the location of a boss fight. These 4 bosses are the most powerful in the game, needing the most powerful endgame equipment to beat, which is also exclusive to the endgame. And of course, we can't use any weapons. As of writing this script, I have no idea if any of this is even possible. But with that being said, let's go over the rules of the run so that we know exactly what we're working with. We can't use any weapons on our main character, only using our fists or thrown objects to do damage. Our main pawn can have a weapon equipped, but only for using healing and buffing magic. But that's pretty much it. Anything else goes. But since the Unmoored World is such a weird game state, I'm adding a couple of new conditions to the run. The run is considered complete if we are able to successfully beat all of the red pillar bosses, and we have to complete as many evacuation quests as possible. This is going to make the run much more difficult as we only have 12 in-game days to do this. Because you see, in the main game, you're supposed to rest at inns and taverns to restore your health, which includes your maximum health, as that can be drained when you take damage as well. And this also saves your game, but doing so causes a day to pass. We have a time limit of 12 days to complete the run, and for every few days that pass, a section of the world is consumed by the storm, locking us out of beating the boss for that area. This means that we can only save our game a few precious times between each boss, and if we mess up, we have to start from the first day all over again, losing all progress. Now, I went into this kind of as blind as possible, but I did look up some mini guides just to give me an idea of what I was in for, and according to a guide on Reddit, yes I know, we have 1 day of rest when nothing happens. So we do have a chance to save before any major battles. Speaking of preparation though, that is proving to be harder than expected, and I haven't even started playing the game yet. This particular part of the game, that being the Unmoored World, is not very well documented online, with even the wiki pages for the upcoming bosses being empty or non-existent. Not to mention that in my first playthrough of the game, I only ended up beating 1 boss since I had no idea what was going on at all. So, for a few encounters, I'm going into this completely blind. And to top it all off, I haven't even played this game since the last video 1 year ago. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know why I do this sort of thing to myself. That was a long preamble, but I felt that all of this needed to be explained clearly for us to understand exactly what this challenge is and what our goals are. So without further ado, let's get started. Upon awakening in the apocalypse, I realised that since I left Haruka, our pawn, behind for the final battle, I now have no idea where she is. We're given a quest to find her though, heading to Batul. And on my way there, I'm reminded of one of the many annoyances of the first video, flying enemies. Since I hadn't played the game in a long time, it took me a while to get back into the swing of things, but I eventually got the hang of it. And to my surprise, my damage seemingly hasn't fallen off. With these basic enemies, I'm doing about as much damage comparatively as before. I guess all of that grinding really paid off. But not long after that, I arrived in Batul, complete with its new ominous red pillar. Don't worry, I'll be coming back for you. To my surprise, it was actually Evil McEvilson who ended up finding Haruka and kept her from harm. Well, maybe you aren't so McEvilson after all. However, in exchange for this, he asks that I meet him at the volcano encampment, as he might have a plan to stop the end of the world. Sure, but because that really worked out well for you last time. But with Haruka now recovered, she rejoins the party, meaning that our destination is the Seafloor Shrine, the last bastion against the end. On our way there, we end up fighting some more enemies, and now that I have Haruka's healing and buffing magic back, these fights feel just as good as before. Which again is still way worse than just using weapons, but it's nice to be back to full strength. We also start collecting what will be a very useful item in this run, berry stones. These enable fast travel between the various settlements and cities around the world. And now, because the ocean has dried up, there are just dozens of these items laying around. This is going to be great for a lot of the back and forth trips we'll be doing, as the roads are extremely dangerous now, and of course we can't die, otherwise we'll reset. So forgive me for making use of fast travel quite a bit. But regardless, we survive the journey to the Seafloor Shrine, fighting many groups of skeletons on the way, and upon arriving, we see a blue pillar of energy in the centre. Approaching, we find the former Arisen who gave us the Godsbane blade in the first video. He tells us that the Seafloor Shrine is protected under his influence, and he even summons some of our allies here. We're instructed to begin the evacuation effort, telling the citizens of all the major cities to flee here for safety. I decided to head to Vernworth first, as it was the first place we visited in our adventure, and I kinda thought it would have the easiest bosses as a result. Speaking of which, we encountered our first boss on the way, an ogre fighting some skeleton mages, so I decided to see if my damage against regular enemies was indicative of how well I could handle bosses. And it's good news, as it seems that we can still fight effectively. My attacks still do decent damage, especially the critical hits, and I even seem to be really tanky as well, not taking nearly as much damage as I thought I would. And the ogre seems to think I was one hell of a scary guy, as he jumped up on the wall and refused to come down with no way for me to hit him.
Get down from there! How about new?
Now I will admit, I let my newfound confidence get the better of me. We encountered a drake near a village on our route, and I thought I would try my hand at fighting him to get an idea of how I'd fare against a higher tier boss. And to be fair to myself, I was dealing significant damage, even knocking the drake down for a crit. But I was quickly reminded of my biggest enemy from the original run, full damage. Since my maximum HP had fallen to around half due to all of the fighting I'd been doing up until now, I ended up dying for the first time since entering the endgame. Not wanting to use my only revival item here, I decided to take the game over and reload my last save. I was greeted by a cutscene of me awakening in the normal world. forcing me to return to the very start of the endgame, opening cutscene and all. This meant that if I died at all in the future, I could lose all progress. Now, later on, I would learn that I could reset from my last rest, but I was feeling pretty intimidated by the challenge before me at the time. This was going to be the toughest thing I'd ever done in a game. Hey, look, I don't normally do challenge runs like this, alright? After quickly repeating everything I had just done in order to get back to where I was, I set out for Vernworth once again. I made sure to stop by any shops that I could to buy supplies, including some new rings like the Ring of Regeneration, which restores my health over time. I had no idea if any of these things would even be useful, but I'd rather have them than not. On the way, I encountered more enemies. I was able to defeat minor bosses like ogres with ease, and most enemies didn't give me any trouble aside from one encounter with some goblins that ended up being a close call. It would seem that the strength of the monsters hadn't really increased that much, but the types of encounters had. For example, goblin hordes would have more members, meaning that I could easily be ganged up on. My current level of strength seemed to be up to par for the task at hand, but carelessness could still certainly lead to death. After arriving in Vernworth, I met with Captain Brandt at the tavern. He seemed shocked to see me, and even more shocked to find out that the world was ending. Mate, have you looked outside? Regardless, he's fully on board with the evacuation, but thinks the citizens won't be so keen, so I needed to ask the current leader of Vernworth, Sven, to help out. Sven is a chill dude. He agreed to help, but his mother is refusing to leave. His mother was one of the corrupt officials that propped up the false sovereign from the first video. Not a very nice lady overall. He asks that I get some ox carts ready to take people to safety, so I need to go and speak to the ox cart merchant in order to get everything set up. When I arrived, some rich guy had already bought out all of the carts to take his wealth with him out of the city. So, in an attempt to knock this douchebag out, I accidentally killed one of the oxes with a single punch. Okay, but Kiryu has punched a tiger before, so this is lore accurate. I ended up pinning him onto the floor and threatening to leak his tax records, which made him run away in fear, and the carts were all mine. I decided to leave before the merchant noticed that his ox wasn't just taking a power nap. The next thing I had to do was convince Sven's mother to leave as well. You know what? I'm just going to let my genius speak for itself. Wait, that actually worked. I didn't think that was gonna work. I just picked her up. I thought, you know what, screw it. I'm gonna make you two talk. And it just worked. The cutscene's going. Are you serious? Dude, you could have. She was like 2 rooms down. You could have just walked over. Oh, this game is something else, man. With that now complete, Vernworth was successfully evacuated, meaning that I could now move on to my next target, the Sacred Arbor. The Sacred Arbor is an elven settlement north of Vernworth that's located in some ancient ruins. We never actually went there in the first video, as no main quests send you there at all. And I only ever explored this place in New Game Plus of my personal playthrough. I never made it there before it was consumed by the storm in my original playthrough either, so from here on out, I'm completely blind as to what happens next. I ended up buying some more supplies before heading out, just in case. I was feeling confident again. It would seem like we would be able to complete the evacuation quests without issue. The last one not even requiring combat. But then, on the way to the Sacred Arbor, I encountered him. The Dullahan was a new enemy that I had not encountered before in this run or in my previous playthrough, and he nearly just ended everything right then and there. This guy not only hits like a truck, but also has massive AoE attacks that stun me and can lock me into an inescapable grab. And to top it all off, he can teleport. Haruka was downed in a single combo from the Dullahan, and I had to try and flee. The problem is this guy is relentless. He chased me down for a full 8 minutes as I tried to escape, nearly killing me multiple times. I was only able to get away by the skin of my teeth, but now me and Haruka only had half of our maximum HP once again, meaning that my original goal of completing all the evacuation quests before the first rest was looking less and less achievable. And I had a feeling I'd be seeing the Dullahan again in the future. Not long after, I was ambushed by an ogre. This wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't for the dire state my health was in, combined with most of my healing items being used just to survive the Dullahan. And now, smaller enemies joining in as well, even basic encounters now felt like a mad panic for survival, and my blood pressure was not appreciating it. We'd managed to make it to the Sacred Arbor in mostly one piece, and upon arriving, I spoke to a guy who looked like the most important NPC and started the evacuation quest. As I was walking with him, I got a cutscene reminding me to activate the fast travel point here, so I went to go and do that, only to find out that it was already activated, as were the fast travel points for all of the major settlements I needed to evacuate, for some reason. Ah well, at least I know I can easily get to Batul now. There was a new issue, however. Most of the citizens only spoke Elven, and I had no way of understanding them.
I cannot understand anything that they're saying.
I ended up having to hire a warrior pawn who could speak the language, acting as a translator. I also unequipped his weapons, just in case he decided to take a swing at something. I explored the area, finding out that the Arbor Heart was a sacred tree that gave life to the area, but it itself was dying. It needs a special soil from somewhere far away, but none of the elves knew what it was or how to get to where it was. Luckily for me, our new translator was able to tell us that the soil was made in Batul, so I guess we can head there next and maybe finish the evacuation quest there while we're at it. Upon returning to Batul, I met the captain of the guard, who was breaking up a fight in the streets. Turns out there was a ton of discord in Batul right now, and people are fighting each other left and right. In order to evacuate the place, we needed to stop the fighting and bring peace so the journey can go off without a hitch. With that in mind, I also paid a visit to the blacksmith who would give us the special soil that we needed. But I needed to go back to the elves to get a certain type of food as trade. It's a good thing that I set up a fast travel point in Batul and have enough ferry stones for multiple trips, or this would be a nightmare. I returned to Tree Lady to ask for the food, and she said that she can make it. Perfect. All that she would need is rotten apples and rotten fish. Wait a minute. The only way to get rotten food is to rest and make time pass so that they spoil while they're in my inventory. Right now, I can't reliably rest as I don't know which regions would be taken by the storm. I was at a loss, and I wasn't even sure if I could complete my goal of evacuating all the settlements now. I was actually feeling pretty defeated at this point, but I decided to go and get the apples and the fish and possibly try resting once just to see if that would be enough. Luckily, both ingredients can be found at Harve Village, but now it was a case of making them rotten. I decided to go against my better judgment and use my first rest. Luckily, nothing bad seemed to happen, but I only had 11 rests left now, and I didn't know if my next rest would mean the storm would cut off parts of the world or not. And the food still wasn't rotten. I took a gamble and rested a second time, but the food still wasn't rotten. I decided to just stop trying for now and evacuate Batul instead. Once I got there, I had to break up fights all over town, and I did so the only way Kiryu knows how. Once I'd finished, the guard captain and the leader of Batul began the evacuation, but I was asked once again to help McEvilson at the volcano camp. Something tells me I'm going to end up there soon. But as I was leaving Batul, I just couldn't help but notice the red pillar in the center of town. I had wasted 2 rests already, restoring my health to full, but cutting down my remaining time. I figured that if there was any time to try beating one of the 4 final bosses, it was now. So, this isn't what I was expecting. After the jar descends, McEvilson just appears out of nowhere, saying that the jar falling from the sky meant a dragon was on its way. If we could destroy it in time, we could prevent the attack. However, the jar had called monsters to its aid, meaning that the town was overrun. We would have to fight hordes of enemies and navigate through the streets in order to reach the jar. Alright, I'm just going to be completely honest with you all. This was incredibly easy. While the large hordes of enemies did cause me some trouble just through their sheer numbers, the fact that they were just regular enemies, and we had McEvilson fighting with us as well, it was barely a challenge. Even when meteors started falling from the sky, they were pretty easy to dodge, we just had to fight our way through to the end. And as we neared the jar, McEvilson just runs ahead like a bloody idiot. And as he does so, the biggest wave of enemies spawn in. This encounter was the toughest out of them all, but still not really a challenge. For me, that is. As I would not know how much of a toll this battle would really take. McEvilson died in the final encounter, and I had to revive him to complete quests later on, meaning that I had to waste my only revival item on him. This means that I wouldn't have any for the upcoming boss battles. But with a swift punch to the jar, it's instantly destroyed, winning us the battle. McEvilson says he will retreat for now, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to be having some choice words with him at the volcano camp later. Despite the drain on my resources, that was one boss out of 4 completed. I'm hoping that the fact that this was so easy won't reflect on how the rest of the run is going to go. Now, back to the original issue of rotten food. I was worried that if I rested again, which should cause the food to rot, that the Sacred Arbor would be the first region to be swallowed by the storm. However, according to Fextralife, which is the most reliable and accurate source of info, as we all know, if I defeated the Red Pillar boss, it would stop the storm from potentially advancing here. At this point, I didn't think there was any other way, so I decided to challenge the next boss. This fight seemed incredibly intimidating at first, going in without prior knowledge, but I quickly saw the path to victory. The monster's head was covered in this thick red substance, making its main weak spot, the horn, invulnerable to damage in addition to damaging me for as long as I was touching it. However, near the tip of the tail, there were small fleshy spots. Much like the lesser dragon from earlier on in the run, I could attack these and destroy them to deal large chunks of damage. And to top it off, the more of these mini weak spots I destroyed, the more the red substance protecting the head would dissipate. So I just had to slowly make my way up from tail to head, destroying as many weak spots as I could. And now that I knew how to win, all I had to do was just get stuck in. After about 14 minutes of popping pimples, the beast was down. This makes 2 bosses out of 4 with no deaths during the actual fights. I was starting to think that I overestimated the challenge the Unmoored world was going to pose, as these main bosses had actually been the easiest part so far. At this point, I was genuinely surprised by how strong our fists actually were at this point in the game. I guess the main challenge of this run was just getting to this point. What with all of the grinding and trial and error that we went through in the first video, we're now seeing the results of all of that effort. It actually felt amazing to finally feel on par with a normal playthrough of this game. However, despite all of this, I was still paranoid about resting, because I wasn't sure if now the volcano encampment would be the next to go, since I helped the Arbor. And trust me, when I said this part of the game wasn't well documented online, I meant it. Nobody could tell me which part of the world would get destroyed first, so I was now assuming that it was random or maybe was influenced by which areas you hadn't saved yet. Despite all of this though, I decided to risk it and rest anyway. If something went wrong here, I'd have to restart the run from the very beginning and do all of this again.
I'm so nervous. Like, if I rest and it like destroys the volcano camp, I've got to do all of this again. I mean, I know it technically wouldn't be too much, like I've already got all this footage, but I really don't want to have to go through it all again. I'm pretty sure it takes the Arbor first though, normally. So, and I think because I staved it off, it should be fine. I don't know, it's so inconsistent. Please don't destroy anything, please don't destroy anything. Oh, come on, don't destroy anything. But auto-saved. Nothing happened. We're safe! Wait, I need to check. Is the food rotten? Why is the food still not rotten?
The food still wasn't rotten, and at this point, I wasn't willing to risk another rest. So I ran around town, desperately trying to find another way to save the Arbor. For some reason, the leader of the Arbor suddenly decided to evacuate. I wasn't sure what was going on, but after a quick online search, it turns out that because I'd been speaking to him after every rest, he eventually just broke down and agreed to leave. This old elf, stuck firmly in his ways, decided to leave his ancient ancestral home because I ended up being such an annoying little shit that he just gave up. You know what, I'll take it. With the arbors saved, I figured I should head to the volcano camp next to try and see what McEvilson's plan was to save the world. It better be good after what he did. But on the way there, I met a man called Ernesto who was willing to help with the evacuation of the volcano region. The only issue being that an old blacksmith and his wife lived far away from the camp, and they couldn't spare the people needed to go and retrieve them. So I offered to go instead. Fun fact, in the first video I actually had met this couple before and helped them with their quest on my way to get Warfarer, which meant that they should trust me and this quest should be a done deal. I guess all that time wasted getting Warfarer wasn't actually a waste at all, and just as I predicted, they were willing to come with us. But we did have to escort them back to the camp ourselves. But it turns out they really didn't need our protection.
Jesus fucking Christ, Grandma, you just obliterated them! Don't mess with her, I suppose.
After we make it back safely, Ernesto is having an argument with Lamont, the former Arisen turned drunk that gave us Warfarer in the first video. He didn't want to leave, but again, since we went to the trouble of doing the Warfarer quest last time, he quickly agrees once we ask him. I had no idea that all that time spent getting Warfarer, only to never use it, would actually help out so much nearly a year later. You see, things like this are actually why I love this game. With the volcano camp successfully evacuated, all of the major settlements were now safe, meaning that the first part of the goal of this run is now complete. We just need to start defeating the remaining bosses. I thought that the McEvilson quest was related to the evacuation of the volcano camp, which is why I wanted to do it in the first place, so I instead decided to travel back to Vernworth to face the boss there instead. As I saw the Colosseum in which the next boss resided, I knew this was going to be a tough one, and if I lost this time, I would be sent back to before I evacuated camp. Luckily for me, there was a chest containing an item that fully healed my maximum HP, meaning that I didn't need to risk resting just yet. As I dodged various annoying enemies on my way through some old ruins, I approached the Colosseum. As soon as the fight started, I once again noticed some familiar looking pink spots along the dragon's legs and back. Same as the previous fight, I had to break these to do damage to the dragon, causing more to appear so that I could eventually attack the head. However, this was not as easily done as before. These weak spots were much smaller, meaning that with my small hitboxes, these were a bit harder to hit. Not to mention that some of them put me in the way of the dragon's attacks, knocking me off and doing some significant damage. And to top it all off, the dragon could fly, meaning that the ever-present fall damage could spell the end at any moment. This time, I had a real fight on my hands. dragon defeated, only one red pillar remained. If I took this one down, then I would have been successful in defeating all of the red pillar bosses, and the run would be complete. Once again, not wanting to risk losing the volcano camp to arrest and having to start all over again, I decided to head straight for the next boss. If I lost here, then I'd need to restart from before the last boss, but I'd much rather do that than have to restart the entire run again. If I beat this boss now, the run would actually be complete, as this is the final red pillar boss. Although we'd reached this point much sooner than I expected, it was time to finish this run. To my surprise, I had to fight another dragon. This one did have some key differences which made this a slightly tougher fight, this dragon using explosive fire and earth attacks as opposed to the previous dragon's lightning and wind attacks. This dragon would also do frequent bombing runs, covering the arena in the same deadly red substance that covered its body. This meant staying in one spot was dangerous, something Haruka did not seem to understand, with my pawn constantly going down causing me to run out of healing items, and the constant dodging I needed to do while waiting for the dragon to land. This fight ended up being much harder than the previous dragon. But the core of the fight was the same, so I knew how to win. With the final dragon felled, all of the red pillars were now gone. As far as I understood, this run was now complete, as there were no more major bosses left to fight. I had actually done it. It was a huge relief to finally see the end of the run in sight, but something was bothering me. There was still the quest with McEvilson about preventing the end of the world. I thought that it was tied to the Red Pillar or the evacuation mission for this area, but apparently not. So there was something else left to do. I decided to rest once again now that I should be able to without consequence. After a successful rest, it was finally time to see what McEvilson had in store for us.
I just got a message from Chaos while recording this video saying Dragon D's nuts and Dogma balls. Chaos, when you see this video, just so you know, I've just outed your bullshit for the whole world to see. I'm even gonna take a screenshot of it, just to make sure that it gets seen. Okay, I just want you to know that. Well done, mate. You made it into my video. I decided to return to the seafloor shrine now that everyone had evacuated. It was now a bustling hub, filled with all of the NPCs that we had met on our adventure.
I honestly felt really satisfied to see the effort that we went to actually pay off, and having all of the shops in one place was also a nice bonus. Also, this random elven merchant gave me a scroll that taught Haruka how to translate their language. Could have done with that earlier, you dick. But with our supplies restocked, it was finally time to return to the excavation site where this whole adventure began, to meet McEvilson and decide the fate of the world. I think.
Always forget how the map works. Right, so yeah, just head out the north exit, and then phases is...
What?
That was not there before. Why is there another red pillar?
Oh shit, there's another red pillar.
I guess I'm not done. Oh shit. Okay. Apparently. Well, I guess I know where I'm going.
Yeah. Apparently I had either missed a secret fifth red pillar, or it had only just appeared. This meant that the run wasn't over yet. There was another challenge to tackle. It was an odd feeling, walking along the same path I did when heading to the end of the game the first time, seeing the destruction that was created during the big golem boss fight from the first video, even passing by its broken body parts. So imagine my surprise when I ended up meeting McEvilson. He had managed to find the golem that we had defeated in that first video. Haruka suddenly jumps into the golem and starts piloting it like a mecha. She single-handedly defeats the boss for the final red pillar, which seemed to be just another Leviathan, completely skipping the fight. Now, I had conflicting feelings about this. On the one hand, that was another repeat fight that we didn't have to do, meaning that the run was still complete, but I honestly just wasn't satisfied with not beating the boss myself. While I was debating resetting the game to go back to the start of the day so I could challenge the boss myself, another red pillar appeared right in the center of the seafloor shrine. The spooky ghost man who had started all of this came out to insult me a bit, telling me that I was an idiot for setting the world down this path before leaving once again. I did a quick online search to confirm what I had remembered from my last playthrough, in that touching that pillar will just end the game. So I decided to go ahead with my plan to restart and fight the fifth red pillar myself, in order to end the game on just some sort of a challenge. The battle was, as expected, a rematch with the Leviathan. This time would be a little bit different, however. He had a new supernova attack that he would use starting at low health, and this was one that I had to climb up his body to stop him doing. If I didn't have enough speed or stamina to make that climb, I would be met with a massive tornado attack and be flung across the arena. This actually resulted in my first real death to one of the bosses, in which I died from the fall damage. But through sheer luck, I had managed to pick up another revival item on the way here, meaning that I could continue the fight. And continue, I did. And that was it. There were no more fights left in the Unmoored world. All of the red pillars had been defeated, and as I was about to leave, I heard an odd stomping sound that I couldn't figure out the origin of. From what I could gather, it seemed to be coming from the Moonglint Tower, where I had encountered the dragon at the end of the main game. Getting a little excited, I decided to investigate. But all that ended up happening was that I was told by the spooky ghost man that there was nothing here. The time for resistance is over. Somehow that line made me think maybe it was time to give up. Trying to find some final extra challenge to prolong the game and this video was pointless. I had accomplished everything that I had set out to do. There was nothing left, right? Well, apparently there was something small. Turns out that the stomping noise I had heard before was actually a rock golem attacking the excavation site. So I defeated it. I ended up meeting Enrique. He was trying to help the pawns who had been trapped here since the very start of the game, but they couldn't leave since the Overseer had used Godsway in order to order them to stay put. Enrique tasked me with finding the Godsway crystal and breaking the control over them, granting them freedom. While it wasn't the challenge I was looking for, I thought it would be nice to tie everything up narratively by coming back to where it all started. Also, one of the goals of the run was to evacuate everyone, and so if I had actually missed this, then I would have failed the run. After searching some buildings, we find the corpse of the Overseer inside a house, with his Godsway staff on the floor next to him. Taking this back to Enrique, he is able to lift the command on the pawns, evacuating them to the seafloor ruins, finishing the game's final quest. At the end of it all, this feels bittersweet. I've finished the run, plain and simple. There's nothing left. All quests are complete, everyone is evacuated, and all of the pillar bosses have been defeated. There was no big, spectacular finale to be found. I think most of the challenge of this run came from the journey rather than the destination. The grinding and problem solving we did in the first video was what led us to this level of power. A level of power that ended up nearly trivializing the final fights of the game. Honestly, the hard part was getting swarmed by regular enemies on the way to and from places. Actually, that reminds me of something. Some unfinished business. As I described earlier, Badulahan is a nasty enemy. With its massive AoE attacks capable of stunning me, it was hard to get in close enough for enough time to deal damage. In addition, it had long combo attacks that were clearly meant to be countered using shields or weapon skills, both of which I couldn't use, so I would often get pulled into a combo that I couldn't get out of. And to make things even worse somehow, it had a projectile attack that would drain my stamina if it hit me, leaving me completely helpless. But what makes this fight distinctly challenging compared to the Red Pillar bosses was the lack of a solid weak point for me to attack. You're supposed to attack with Dullahan's severed head that it's holding in its hand in order to damage it, but most of our fist attacks had a hard time reaching it, especially when he would raise it up into the air. Combining that with the very short windows of opportunity to attack, and I had a ridiculously tough fight on my hands. Now, all of this alone would have made for a tricky fight, but the environment was also an issue. This battle being near a cliff was dangerous for obvious reasons, but more often than not, other enemies would jump into the fight as well, and if that happens, the fight was basically already lost and I would have to reset the encounter. Luckily for me, I had already accomplished all of my other goals for this run, and had rested right before the fight, so all I needed to do was win. After my 7th attempt, I noticed that because the Dullahan was undead, Haruka's healing magic was actually doing damage to it. I wasn't sure if people would consider this against the rules of the run, so I left Haruka behind. Stocking up on healing items, I challenged the Dullahan once again, but it was only after dismissing Haruka that I realized how much damage she was actually doing in this fight. I could barely make a dent in the Dullahan's HP without her magic, and at this point, I was truly unsure of what to do.
In fact, I've thrown goblins so many times that Haruka has started doing it as well, as pawns actually learn and mimic your combat style in the game. Kiryu would be proud.
I swapped Haruka's vocation to warrior, which definitely improved the attempts. It would seem that staggering the Dullahan makes it take more damage for a short period of time. With the two of us attacking, that led to more staggers. But it still wasn't enough. While I was able to get beyond the first health bar this way, the lack of extra healing made me lose the endurance race more often than not, since I had used most of my healing items by the time I even got to that point of the fight. So after a few more attempts with just us two, I decided to swallow my pride somewhat and try beating the fight with 2 extra pawns, both unarmed warriors. I had gone through so many attempts at this point that I was willing to try anything to get this fight over with. But even that was still not enough. The pawns were being downed what felt like every 30 seconds, with me running around the battlefield reviving them all constantly. While the extra damage and stagger potential seemed helpful, I wasn't seeing any improvement in our attempts. I still couldn't even get past his second health bar. Now, don't get me wrong, if I had prepared more for this fight, there would have been a much greater chance of success. If I had stocked up on more healing items throughout the entire run, I might have just been able to cheese my way to victory through out-healing with damage. But at this point, I had no more ways of getting healing items that wouldn't require me running all over the map looking for them, if there even was any left. By evacuating all of the citizens of the towns, I had actually made things slightly worse for myself, as there was now only one shop to buy healing items from, and the stock was very limited. And since I'd used most of my remaining rests to refill that shop's stock over and over, that was no longer an option. At this point, I was out of ideas, and I was losing the will to continue. I had already accomplished everything I had set out to do, and struggling against such a frustrating fight just felt like I was trying to prolong the inevitable once again. I figured it was time to give up. But not before I try one last option. Now I know what you're thinking. Doesn't this invalidate the run? Well, I'm not sure. A shield doesn't actually increase my attack power at all, and I'm still not using any weapon skills. All the shield does is allows me to block, and that's it. If anything, because I swapped off of Warrior, I'm actually weaker in this state, but at this point, I was willing to try anything. But I quickly realised this wasn't going to work at all. All blocking with a shield did was cause my stamina to deplete pretty much instantly, which left me vulnerable, and I ended up taking more damage than I was before. The lack of offense and defense that Warfarer has compared to Warrior just wasn't going to cut it. So I ended up giving in. I swapped Haruka back to a mage, letting her heal myself and the other pawns. Yes, her healing magic does damage the Dullahan, and if you think that invalidates the run, then so be it. But I already proved you can beat the story, the Unmoored world, and evacuate all the NPCs without weapons. This was just a personal extra challenge, but I was too stubborn to give up on. But for the sake of my sanity and getting this video out in time, I decided to make this strategy my last. I'm not a hardcore challenge runner like those you see online. I'm just a guy trying to have some fun and make an interesting video. So here we go. My final set of attempts. Either I win, or the world ends. You've got to be kidding me. Literally right there. Oh, a couple more hits and he was dead. Oh, I did not come here to play Dark Souls! Damn it! Oh, I was so close. Okay, next time for sure. Next time for sure. And that was that. 2 attempts later, and he went down. In the end, while the extra damage from Haruka's healing spell did land the finishing blow, that wasn't what won us the fight. She actually dealt very little damage over the course of the fight, because the Dullahan actually had to stand in her healing AoE to take damage, and that never really happened. What truly helped was the shield spell that she provided. It allowed me and the other pawns to survive combos that we otherwise wouldn't, prevented us from being staggered, allowing us to escape and attack from behind, which gave myself especially many more attack opportunities, which meant there was less of an endurance test. But overall, I can certainly see why people would say this invalidates the run. And in the end, nothing changed about how I played the run, since healing magic was allowed from the start. It's just that it happened to be able to deal damage this one time. Every other fight was completely legit. But now, as I stare on the final pillar on the horizon, it was time to truly end everything. By interacting with the final pillar, the true dragon is summoned once again. But this time, it's bigger and meaner due to the corruption of the Unmoored world. Haruka transforms into some kind of ink dragon? I mean, she can pilot a mecha. At this point, the story can do whatever it wants. We fly up to take on the dragon for the final time. As I climb up the dragon's body, dodging attacks while the credits play and the spooky ghost man talks in my ear, I reflect on the run as a whole. This is by far not only the biggest challenge I've undertaken in terms of playing a game, but also in making a video. It has its highs and it had its lows, but I ended up having an absolute blast with all of it. And as I sit here writing this script and recording this audio, I truly wonder how all of this will have turned out. Have I made something I can be proud of? Was it all worth it? Then I remind myself about the very lesson Dragon's Dogma 2 taught me. It's about the journey, not the destination. Even if this wasn't being made into a video, I could hold my head high as I set myself a challenge to complete, and I succeeded. And in the end, I loved almost all of it. The grinding I might have been able to do without. As I fly above the dragon's exposed heart, I get ready to break the cycle of the Dragon's Dogma once and for all.
そして滅びがこれで全て終わる。なんと口惜しい。
夢か。
どうしたの怖い顔して。
なんだ、はるかか。どこ行ってたんだ。どうしたその花束。
お墓参りに行くって言ってたでしょ。
ああ、そうだったな。
おじさん、お腹すいた？すぐに朝ごはん作るね。
ああ、俺も手伝うよ。
いいって、私一人でできるから。この1年で上達したんだからね。
そうだったな。
With the dragon and the Arisen destroyed, the cycle was finally over. The world of Dragon's Dogma was now finally at peace. God damn it! I still forgot to get the second Ring of Brawn!